I'm in Montgomery, Alabama, and this is where Rosa Parks famously refused to sit at the back of the bus. So I'm actually just going to head over. The bus stop where she got on is just over there, so I'm just going to go and have a look and wander around historic Montgomery. I believe this is also the capital of Alabama. Just behind me here is the bus stop. Rosa Parks got on the bus and then refused to sit in the section at the back. And it was at this spot here in Montgomery where Rosa Parks was arrested for not giving up her seat to a white person. Behind me here is the old Greyhound bus terminal. And the freedom rides, which during the civil rights movement were an organised campaign of black and white people riding together, unsegregated in buses from the north down to New Orleans through Alabama as a protest of segregation. Now, the bus station behind me, this doorway here, which has been tiled, used to be the coloured only entrance, and above it, that you might be able to see, there's some just up here, there's some holes in the wall where there used to be a sign saying coloured entrance. So this is quite sobering to think that only 50, 60 years ago, people of colour in this area really had it tough and were treated absolutely abysmally. So I'm just here near the famous bridge in Selma, just wandering through the trees along near the river. I was just talking to the greeter here, a man called Columbus, whose uncle was one of the marchers on the bridge. He was telling me about the march and all sorts of things, and when I started to head down into this area to have a wander, he told me how this was one of the places where lynchings happened.
Out here in this area here, it was the subject of a lot of lynching back in the 1800s, early 1900s. Whenever they would take the slaves from the ship up into the auction blocks, if they was fighting back or being resistance, and of course there was, nobody's meant to be a slave. They was fighting back. They was actually taken to any of these trees out here, according to historians. One particular tree could be identified as the culprit, so any tree could have possibly been one used, but they would lynch them right in front of the other slaves.
Wow.
You can imagine kids seeing it.
Or
either they would put them into the river and put weight on them and drown them right in front of the slave. This created fear, and this kept control. So if you walk out there, you can feel it almost. It's like on the album, something eerie happened here.
Yeah, man. It's intense. So on the day of the march from Selma to Montgomery, which they call Bloody Sunday, the troopers who intercepted them and where the violence started, they kept their horses here under the bridge.
So when the marchers was on the bridge, they was oblivious to the horses underneath.
Okay.
And so they actually discreetly brought the horses out quietly on to the highway.
Yeah.
So it was almost like an orchestrated hit.
Apparently it was just behind me here where the law enforcement officers formed a barricade.
That's where the troopers and the county sheriff intercepted the marchers.
Right, okay.
So that's where the violence started at.
Walking around here, walking across this bridge, I'm actually finding it quite emotional. So, March 1965, a group of regular people decided to march to Montgomery, which is about 110 kilometres that way, to demand voting rights. And they were met with troopers just on the county line just up here. And they were brutally beaten.
My uncle, he was actually on the bridge on Bloody
Oh, really?
Sunday.
Okay, wow.
He thought and lost his left eye, but he served in Korea first.
Okay.
And
yeah.
he just said that, he was so proud to be able to vote for the first time in 1966. My uncle, I asked him, I said, how bloody was it on the bridge, Uncle Willie? I said, I know you lost your eye, but I said, but what's as bloody as they say it was, or you guys say it was? In hindsight, I probably shouldn't say you say it was, but because I was younger, a little naive, he understood, though. He was a quiet, gentle man. He said, I'm glad you asked. He said, my shirt was soaked in blood.
Wow.
He said, people was bleeding all on the bridge, all on the road. Blood was everywhere.
Wow.
So why do you think they call it Bloody Sunday?
Yeah.
And I never asked again. I took him for his word on it.
Eventually, throughout the whole thing, a couple of people were killed, but there were over 50 people hospitalised as a result of injuries that happened here. A couple of weeks later, Martin Luther King organised another march from here to Montgomery that had approval, and they marched that whole way. So I'm in a town called Boykin, which is also known as Gee's Bend, Alabama, and it's in a big huge bend in the Alabama River, like in the middle part, so it's surrounded by river. Here is a quilters collective, and it's quite well known for their amazing quilts that they do, and I think every day in the morning they're quilting here and people can go and watch them. It's a bit late in the day for me to see them, but this area is very interesting in terms of civil rights because in order to get to somewhere to vote, so after they're able to vote, African American people, who a lot of the people in this area are, when they were allowed to vote in 1965, they had a ferry which they could get into town very easily, but the county cut the ferry, and so they were forced to make a massive trip, big drive to get around to vote and things like that. So, and that ferry didn't return until 5 or 10 years ago. So for like almost 50 years they didn't have a ferry. They were isolated here in this bend from the local community, and the only way to get there was a huge drive around. So